Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. I am Janine Luby, aka Funny Wine Girl. And in this week's episode, we are talking with a triple threat. She's a mom, she's an educator, she's an entrepreneur. It's Susan Thackara from the Front Porch Bake Shop. So welcome, Susan.
Janine, how are you?
I'm doing well. Well, before we get started with your amazing story, I always like to share a fact or two that's related to wine. And I will say I am not drinking wine right now. I'm drinking water and seltzer because I've had enough wine on other days. So it's okay to do it. It's a good, let me say, forget okay. It's a good idea to do a few dry days. But I like to share some facts about the past year and a half have been pretty interesting, to say the least, for a lot of us. So some interesting facts that tie into, well, first of all, wine, because, I always like to talk about that, but also to Susan and what we'll be talking about today, being an entrepreneur and with what she does in particular, Front Porch Bake Shop, so sweets and desserts. So just some interesting facts I wanted to share. 2020, the alcohol sales were at the highest level in 18 years, and alcohol consumption in the US increased by 2%, which is the biggest increase over years since 2002. And wine accounts for about a third of those sales. Now, talking about sweets, which, Susan will get to in a minute here, and she does delicious cakes and cupcakes and things. I mean, rainbow cake I got for my birthday and I loved it, and chocolate peanut butter cake. So she does amazing stuff. But according to Mercado, there was the highest increase. It was April of 2020. An increase of, this is an amazing amount. I don't even know how you figured this, 4,755% in the first week of April compared to just 1 month prior, as far as people purchasing desserts. So it was, and in fact, they said it did go down after that, but it still remained above normal or average through October 2020. So you could see alcohol, desserts. I've engaged in both of those. So when we're stressed, apparently we're reaching for those things. And now finally to the third fact I wanted to share about businesses. I know these are challenging times, and I think I did improv with Susan's husband, Dave. And one thing we learn in improv is yes, and we accept what we're given and try to make something from it. I get people complaining, I get people being upset, but the problem is you can't stay in that place, right? So you have to say, okay, we've got this pandemic. Yes, and what can we do with it? Well, a lot of people like Susan have been very busy being entrepreneurs. At Bloomberg, according to Bloomberg, almost 500,000 new businesses opened in the US in the first year of the pandemic. And apparently, this is continuing. Many of them were, I think they said 67% were related to food, the industries that did open. Even though the restaurants have been struggling, there were a lot of new restaurants and food related businesses that opened. So that's just a little bit about what's been going on as far as we've been consuming more liquor, we've been consuming more sugary products, and people are managing to open businesses. Now, Susan, I think you've opened a business during the pandemic. You're an educator. You're a mom of two. I asked you before how you do it. You said you don't get sleep, and I believe you don't because I have no clue how you would. So I don't even know what you want to tackle first here. If you want to talk about your business or maybe what led you to starting the business.
Sure. So I always wanted to start a little bake shop per se, and I always thought that that would happen after I retired from being a teacher. And I always kind of had that in my mind of what I would do afterwards. Because I was lucky enough to start my teaching career right out of college. So, I already have 22 years of teaching in. So now I'm like, okay, what am I doing next? Right. So that's a blessing. And I just never had the time because, I was getting my doctorate, then I had kids, then it was the next thing. And I believe that COVID and having the world stop and be home provided a lot of people, not just me, but with the time to actually pursue something that they really want to do, not because they have to do it. And not that I don't like teaching, because of course I do like teaching. Why would I be doing it for so long if I didn't? But I'm not just a teacher. So I needed to explore other sides of me. And having that time off just kind of, I didn't plan on it. When COVID hit, I didn't like, that's it. That's time for me to go ahead and open that bake shop. It didn't happen that way at all. So basically, I think lockdown happened just prior to Easter, if I remember. It was like a couple weeks before Easter. And so I was making pierogies and bread and cupcakes, and I kind of just spread it all out on my dining room table. And I took a Facebook picture and I said, "Oh, look at all these goodies going out," because I was just giving them to people. And then that started the conversation on social media with my friends. Why aren't you doing this? I'm a teacher, I'm a mom, I can't do that. Sure you can, And so I started to kind of dabbling in the opportunities of what would it take to open a business. And so COVID, which led into, of course, the summer, gave me a couple months to figure out what I need to do in order to start that business, and then the time to go ahead and do it, because it does take a couple months to go through all the steps to do that. And so it basically just led to, I had a little time to bake and my friends supported me. So that's kind of how that happened.
I mean, it's great because now, I mean, you started that, has it been not quite a year or close to it, maybe?
It's definitely been a year from when I've been selling.
Okay.
I kind of had a soft opening last summer. So I was only kind of selling by word of mouth and to friends and things like that. But last August, I officially got licensed by the state of Pennsylvania. And then we had our grand opening in September. But yeah, I've been licensed for about a year now. So yeah, it's been about a year.
And you have seen, I mean, I've gotten some cakes from you and I got some treats at Easter. And I mean, I've been there and I've seen, you have grown. I mean, and your social media presence, people love what you're doing, and rightfully so. It's not just beautiful to look at, but your cakes and things are actually, they taste good. One of
a
my,
lot, yeah.
yeah, I remember at Valentine's Day I got like the poop emoji cupcakes, and like they were adorable, but they were also delicious. So you have had great success. How have you been able to manage it, and what are you thinking now as it's August and you also have to prepare for getting back to school, not just for you, but your children?
Sure. So I've always had the belief that I would let the business grow as it presented itself. I'm not going to push it in an avenue where it's not going to go. Right now, I'm kind of testing the waters in different places to see where I can kind of give it a little push off of my porch. But we're still working on those types of things. I don't want to reveal anything, but like the cooler on my porch. So I have an actual bakery cooler now. And so I always said to myself, I'm not taking out any loans. When I get my cooler, I get my cooler. And, just kept packing away at the sales, and finally was able to get the cooler, which is necessary in this summer because it's been so hot, or everything would just melt on the porch. So as far as the way the business grows that way, I just kind of let it do it organically instead of taking out any loans. So that would be a big point of advice that I'd give anyone who wants to start their own business, is just let it grow at its own pace and don't push it. So as I'm preparing now to go back to school, I'm really cutting back on the custom orders that I'm doing, because to do custom orders and to bake for the shop, because we're only open on Saturdays, I mean, I went insane last year while I was teaching and trying to do all that. So I've learned what my limits are, and I don't want to burn myself out, because then there is no more front porch bake shop, and that would be really upsetting. So
Yeah.
So baking for Saturday mornings is always a thing that we would do, because that's, to be honest, the thing I enjoy the most. Is I love having that interaction with customers. I love seeing my regulars, puppies being walked on a Saturday morning, and everyone's just like, I just love being able to walk here. It's such a great part of the community. And that's really the part of the business I like the most. Custom cakes are fun and they're great to take pictures of, but they're so time consuming. And it could take all day to make a custom cake. And so that really limits the amount that I can do. So I've been setting myself boundaries already. right now. Yeah, it's the second week of August, and my next custom cake order is in October. So I've been setting myself limits. I'm only going to do certain many, a week, so that I can still manage going to work, managing my children and my business. So, it's just going to have to be a wait. I know that's not convenient for some people, but if you're able to plan a birthday cake for the fall, I would suggest planning instead of calling me and say, I need one for tomorrow, because the answer, unfortunately, would be no.
Yes, you need to
Yeah.
plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds
Yeah.
like you've learned a lot, obviously, and you've learned what works for you, and I'm sure you'll continue to learn. One thing you mentioned about like, seeing your regulars and everything, and I think one of the really cool things that I found about your business, I mean, when we were locked down, you were doing something that it still allowed people to get out, but people were wearing masks, you had hand sanitizer, you were doing it safely and outside, and but yet people were still able to treat themselves to something, which I thought was great. I mean, and not a lot of businesses, not every business could do that, so that was kind of a really cool aspect, that I think that you're like this open air bakery.
I'm NEPA's only open air bakery, as far as I know. Anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anybody else, try that. But it's so weird in America to do that. But if you go to Europe, everything's outside. Like,
Hmm.
everything is outside. So it might be a little odd and strange. I still have people come and they're kind of like peeking on my porch and like kind of looking around, and they start knocking on my front door, and I'm like, hey, I'm over here. And they're like, oh, this it's it's on your porch. I said, it is on my porch. It's the front porch bake shop. And they're like, oh, now I get it. So I still have people like have those aha moments when they come visit. Um, but it's the best thing. Like, you have fresh open air, and obviously everything is contained in a case, so there's no bugs or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's you can have more bugs inside than you can have outside. Trust me, this time of year, the fruit flies are
Yes.
a big deal. But yeah, I just, people kept telling me, thanks for giving me a smile, or thanks for, people would come and they would like get 6 cupcakes for them, but then they'd get 6 cupcakes for their neighbors, and they were sharing smiles and happiness. And so that made me feel good too. So
So it's great when you can have a business where, and you are putting smiles on people's faces. I mean, my gosh, who doesn't love chocolate? Or, I mean, you do so many different flavors, but who doesn't love like a sweet treat? Now, obviously, we could talk about diabetes and obesity, but we won't talk about that today. But it's all about self-control, right? Managing it and everything.
yeah, I mean, we were talking to my husband today. I was like, oh, when I first started, I was doing really good, and I wasn't eating any of my stuff. I mean, you have to every once in a while, but I wasn't sitting down and binging. But I said, like the 2021, like it's been like the 20 pounds in 2021. I feel like it wasn't last year, it was this year. It's just because I don't know what it is. It's just this year in particular. I don't know if it's worse or better than last year's in some regards. It's like COVID's still here, but it's not. Some things are opening, but it's not. You're now able to celebrate. So you kind of over celebrate because you weren't able to celebrate last year, So yeah, I purchased a lot of celery this morning. So cleanse the system. But
Yeah. Yeah. No,
um,
I agree with you about that though, because 2020, I mean, it was scary. And there were times I remember going to sleep going like, I find sometimes I was okay. Other times I was like, are we going to get through this? Like seriously. But I used, I run, and I mean, I'm certainly not a fast runner, but it helps me, clears my head, and it's good, at least a little bit physically burns calories. And I did pretty well in 2020, but 2021, I'm still running, but I found I'm losing my steam a little bit. So 2021, I have found to be almost not more difficult, but different. Like you said, maybe it's the uncertainty. I don't know what it is.
yeah, I don't know. And like you said, I definitely drank a lot more this year than I did last year, I think. It would be like, we put the kids to bed at 9 o'clock, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, finally the kids are down, the house is quiet. We're going to start watching a Netflix, and then out comes the wine and the cheese and the chocolate and the crackers. And then I find that I eat more between 9 o'clock and midnight than I do the entire day. So, but again, like at least, it's good to be aware of those habits,
Yeah.
so that the only way to, change those habits is to be aware of them and just
Hmm.
be cognizant of it. But
Yeah.
yes, a
Yeah, that's
cupcake
true.
once a week is not going to make you fat. That is
No,
very
it's
true.
not. You're right.
So
Absolutely. And I wish I
true.
could blame the pandemic for my wine.
Yeah.
I said I'm going to write the musical due to pandemic. I'm blaming the pandemic for so much, but so many people might be. But
Yeah.
no, but it's, when uncertainty and whether it's uncertainty or even being home more. I think being home more, I know myself, I've got a gig life since I left my corporate job. So I do spend a lot more time at home. Now, before the pandemic, I would take my laptop and go out to coffee shops and work. So being home, it is harder to have self-control, I think, like as far as going to the fridge or, just unhealthy habits. So we do, but as you said, we just have to be aware. That's the main thing. We just have to be aware. Um,
And
but
to be honest, now that things are opening up, and we're just, it's like I don't like being busy again, like going to birthday parties and I'd rather stay home. I mean, I don't know if that makes me sound like an old lady. I just want to stay home and nobody bother me, but I I don't know. On a weekend, I kind of was like, oh, do we have to go here? Now we have to go here, and then we have to go here. It's like, oh, okay. I enjoyed not having to go everywhere. I did like that.
I think you're not alone in that. I mean, I said to people, forget the pandemic. I didn't want people on top of me before this happened. And I
Hmm.
mean, I'll be turning 50 in September. And yeah, I keep saying every day I get closer to being that old lady on the Titanic because I feel like I'm 100 years old, but I don't want to be in crowds. I mean, I don't have kids, so I can only imagine, they've got active schedules. You guys have to be on the go to some degree, but I
Yeah.
like being on my deck with a glass of wine or like with just one or two friends, and I don't like being out in crowds. And like I said, it's nothing to do with 6 feet apart, whatever. I just don't like people on top of me. I like my space. I like the outdoors more than I like being packed in any kind of tight quarters or anything. So for me, I'm all about that. So I understand what you're saying.
Right,
but
right, yeah.
but that's got to be tough with kids because they're always on the go and different things that you kind of have to do, right? Being a
That's
busy
probably
mom.
one of the reasons why I felt that baking during quarantine was the best time, because I'll just move my camera very slightly, but like I was able to lock myself in the kitchen and be away from them. So this is like my way to kind of like be away from my family when they were like, destroying my house. Like, this is my little zen place in here to bake. And then like I said, I just kept doing it and doing it, and people were like, "Why don't you have a Facebook page?" It's like, I don't. Why would I need a Facebook page? Well, because you need a Facebook page. So it's like, okay, well, I guess I should think about that. So, um, but yeah, now to be honest, I really don't like Facebook. The algorithms. Oh man, those algorithms is like a bad. Any small business owner, I'm sure, can relate with me. Those
Mm,
algorithms, it's like a battle every day to
yeah.
figure out what you post, who you like, who you share, in order to get the most amount of views and likes. And it just depends on the time of day and the rotation of the sun. And it's like, oh, come on, you know? So I'm
Yeah.
really glad. One of the things that I pushed for this spring to get on the road was our own web page. And I really love our web page. I had a local guy design it, and it's fantastic because I can update it every week by myself. I don't need to call him. I did in the beginning have to call him a lot, and I appreciate it. Thanks, Steve. Shout out to Steve. But now I can update it, and I just like having that instead of having to rely on social media so much.
Yeah, it's a curse and a blessing at the same time. I mean, it's,
Mhm.
I mean, as business owners, like you do get to put things out there and not have to necessarily do ads, but at the same time, like you mentioned, the algorithm, sometimes it's like, okay, what do they change now? And how do I reach people? And there's so much noise out there. How do you stand out to people? How do you get to who
Mhm.
you need to get to? It's a lot. It's a lot. Um, so let me ask you, we mentioned a little bit, school's going to be starting soon. So you've got to be shifting in that gear. You've been a
Yippee. Yeah,
teacher,
I
22
am.
years you've been a teacher. So reflecting back, and I know things are still not quite normal because now that we have the Delta variant and things are, who knows what will happen. Hopefully nothing too crazy in the next couple of months, but you've been through this as a mom. So that side of it. and as an educator. So I would imagine that's a different perspective because, you get on social media and you hear like moms like, oh, this is, like it's struggle. It's a struggle for them to make, their kids sit still and watch Zoom, or for some of them it's a challenge. I've heard people complain about teachers. I've heard people praise teachers. And then you have the teachers. I talked to one teacher in Scranton, and she has kids uploading like empty assignments, blank papers, and their parents are wondering why they're getting a zero. Sixth graders telling her to F off. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, because I mean, I taught college for 7 years and I'm out of it now because I'm not meant to be a teacher, but I wouldn't have wanted anyone talking to me, an
Mhm.
18 or 19-year-old speaking that way. So my point is there's challenges on both sides. And
Yeah.
you as a mom are seeing, and an educator are seeing both sides. So looking back on the past year and a half, and then looking forward, what are some things that you'd want to share, some perspective from yourself as a mom and an educator?
Well, it was really hard in 2020 because our daughter ended the year on Zoom. Our son is only 3, so he was just here running through the house while she was trying to do Zoom. Luckily, at my district chose to do asynchronous, so I didn't have to be live while our daughter was trying to be live and while my son was trying to destroy the home. So I really lucked out. Now, when the school year started this past school year, I was online with my students, but I still had to go to work every day. So I wasn't home at all last year. And luckily, my daughter, she goes to a private school, so she was actually allowed to go to school since she didn't lose any time. So last year she was in school every day totally. They didn't shut down. They weren't on Zoom or anything like that. So, and then luckily our little one obviously did go back to daycare. So I don't know if I can totally share like um, my total opinion, because I know what other moms went through, and I think I lucked out because I mean there are moms, even on my street or my business partners. I have a local photographer I'm friends with, a local nurse I'm friends with. They had 3, 4, 5 kids. They all had to be in a different room to be on Zoom. And then, their businesses suffered.
Mm.
I know my one friend who's a photographer, she had to be home every single day with her 4 kids, every single day. And like she complained the fact where she didn't feel like she was their mom anymore. She felt like she was more like the disciplinarian, like, no, you have to sit down and do your schoolwork. No, sit down and do your schoolwork. You didn't finish your schoolwork. So she was like always the nag of, you have to finish your schoolwork, instead of just being able to be a mom. And so and then she couldn't take on as many clients because she was always home with her children during the day. And so she wasn't able to do as much photography last year than she would normally do. So I hear those types of stories, and those like broke my heart. So I feel like I kind of got out of it a little bit easy, just because my district, we complained about it at first. We definitely did. Like, I have to be on Zoom every day, but I still have to drive to work. Why? I can just do it here. It was a blessing. Let me tell you, it was a blessing because I was able to focus on teaching my students instead of teaching my students and dealing with my daughter over here and then my son over here, so I feel like at least my students got a little bit better education because our district mandated that we go to work. And not a lot of local districts didn't mandate that their teachers physically go into the building. They were just teaching from home. So like I said, at first I think we were all kind of complaining, like, why are you making us do this? But in the end, if I would reflect on it, it really was the smart thing to do, especially for, even your mental health.
Oh,
I love
yeah.
my kids, but I need a little space, I do, especially because they're young. Like, they are young, and that's when they just need you constantly. So I know a lot of moms can relate to that. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's challenges on both sides. Like you named the moms who had to, they lost business because they had to be home and make sure their kids were, doing what they needed to do. And then there are some parents maybe who complain about teachers, but don't necessarily understand their struggle. So there's obviously challenges on both sides. And I
Yeah.
think even regardless of the pandemic, if it's whether it's a teacher strike or whatever, you hear like sometimes there's, some negatives, some positives. It's probably difficult. I guess the idea is just communication. Is that, I mean, it's because it's hard to stand in someone else's shoes, I guess, and understand, but there's always going to be, I guess, different viewpoints and differences of opinion, and just trying to have maybe mutual respect and understanding and communication. I mean, would you think that would be, I don't know. There's no real solution, but just trying to understand another person's side because you may not know what it's like for them.
Yeah, I think if parents and teachers came to the table and realized the only thing that really matters here is your kid, like
Yeah.
teaching the child, that's the most important thing. So anything else, we need to figure that out because the education of the child is the most important thing. So communication last year was tough. I mean, I remember calling every single one of, I would never normally have time to call every single parent and every single family. But the way our school day was set up in my district, we were granted like kind of like a 1 hour delay schedule every single day so that the students could come in later and we'd get like a bonus time to work on the students who were totally online, because we had a population that was only online and we had some that were only in school and then we had some that did both. But that first hour not only afforded us time to work on the students who were only online and communicate with them, but it also afforded us time to call more families. I think I called every family that I taught at least twice, every single one. You never have time in a normal typical school year to do that, ever. It just never happens. You call the ones that you're having the most trouble with, and and unfortunately they take up a lot more time than the kids that are doing really, really good, and you want to, just do a great phone call home. Hey, Sandy's doing a great job. Way to go. I never have time to do that, unfortunately. But this year, I called every single family at least twice, whether they were doing good or bad or needed improvement. And it was tough. There was a lot of families that you did not have any contact with them at all.
Wow.
They didn't call you back, or they just left right to voicemail, or their phone numbers didn't work. In our district in particular, we had so many deaths, family members who had died, and the kids were dealing with that. And I mean, personally, I think a lot of kids who are going to come back to this school year having a lot more mental health issues than a typical teenager or a young child would, just because sometimes schools, their escape from a bad home life, and they were stuck in that bad home life for over a year. And so it's going to be a lot of support, not just for education for educators this year, but this year it's going to be a lot of support for the child's mental health as well. So I think a lot of educators are going to have even a harder job this year because we need to backtrack and get them caught up, but we also need to do like a daily, like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Let's talk about what happened, so it's going to be an interesting year. That's for sure.
Well, it's certainly a lot. It's a big responsibility. Mental health is so important because if they're not, like you said, maybe their home life was tough and they were at home, how can they focus on learning if there's too many things going on, emotionally or mentally? And so,
sometimes school is the only place a child gets a good meal. They didn't have school. So how, what have they eaten for the last year? Processed foods. I don't know, whatever, you think about that, and then all of a sudden, it, at least for me, it kind of grounds you of like, all right, let's talk about why, Johnny might not be acting so well today. What has Johnny been through for the last year and a half? Let's talk about that first, so you have to really take into consideration the whole child, not just like, for example, I'm a science teacher. So why can't the kid get science? Well, if it's a science problem, it might just be, let's talk about the whole kid in general, and look at the whole picture. So
so it's going to take a lot of, I guess, patience, compassion, I think from everyone, right? Parents, teachers,
a lot of patience.
A lot of
Yeah.
patience. That's a good ingredient, right? For the year ahead.
Yes.
So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And I want to let you give a shout out. Anything else beside before we get to closing here and give your website, anything else that you, an important point, whether it's from a mom's point of view, a business entrepreneur's point of view, or an educator, anything, excuse me, that you'd want to add or point out today?
I would say, any woman who wants to start their own business or ever thought about it, figure out a way to maybe not do the whole thing at once, but try to figure out how to start that in a little bit. Because to me, if you're waiting, it might not ever happen. The other aspect of why I started is, I'm 42 now, but 41. Once you're past 40, you don't even know how old you are. So,
Yeah, you do.
I'm going to be 42. Well, I'm not going to say anything about that, Janine. But anyway, I'm going to be 42, and I have had people younger than me die of breast cancer. Their children have, had diseases. People have been killed in car accidents. There's some staff members in our school, God forbid, have committed suicides. You just never know, who you're going to lose next or what's going to happen to your life. So who knows? How do you know you're going to make it? I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know, but I want to try it. So I tried it. How do I know, what capacity I would be in when I'm in my late 50s or early 60s to even have the energy to start my own business. Now at least I am kind of like you said, I'm learning, and so I'm going to get better a little bit as I go and know when I retire exactly which direction I'm going to go. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, I want to open my own business. I already kind of paved the road a little bit. So then maybe I'll have an idea of exactly what I want to do when that time comes. But yeah, I would say don't wait. Don't use your kids as an excuse. Just don't use money as an excuse. I mean, I think last year at this time, I was, oh my gosh, I think I had like $200 in my bank account, as I was starting this business, and I would just sell a little bit and I'd get a little more and I'd sell a little bit and I'd get a little more. And it just kind of kept building and building and building to now where I can go into, Restaurant Depot or Sam's Club and swipe my ingredients and I don't have to check my balance. Like, okay, I'm good, So, you just start small and do something that is manageable for you. But don't wait and don't let anybody tell you can't do it, and don't have any excuses.
Yeah. And those are all great. I love all that. And, again, not to go back to running, but, longer races, you just go one step at a time. And, like when you can't run, you walk. That's, you just the one step at a time.
Start running again when you can.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how running is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's exactly right. And like you said, don't wait. Because I mean, if anything, if we didn't learn that over the past year and a half, how life can just give us things that we don't expect. We don't have all the time in the world, so don't wait. That's great. So why don't you give us your website, whatever you want to promote there?
So you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook, which is at the Front Porch Bake Shop. And then our website is www.frontporchbakeshop.com, and we update our website weekly, so you can do pre-orders if you want to. Those are usually due on Thursdays. It's a good way to reserve your sweets so that on Saturday, because I'm only open Saturday for a couple hours, so if you come at 11 o'clock on a Saturday, depending on how the morning went, everything, a lot of stuff could be sold out. So pre-orders are great for me personally because it allows me to bake the right amount. I don't want to bake too much, and then what am I doing? I'm stuck with this all, right? What do I do with it? Right? I can't eat anymore. My pants won't let me do that. But then, if I sell out of stuff really quick, then I didn't make enough. So pre-orders really help me manage how much I should make. It just makes the business a little bit more efficient. They're not needed, but they are helpful.
Okay. And your website address?
Oh, it just did that. So I'll say it again. It's www.frontporchbakeshop.com.
Okay, I'm sorry. I heard the Facebook. So yeah, I'm a great person here to interview. I'm like, what? What do you
That's okay.
I swear to God, I'm
again.
listening. Must be my ears are blocked.
That's all right.
All right.
We're located in Wyoming. It's 61 East 4th Street in Wyoming. So it's kind of like a couple blocks away from Sabatini's. But again, we're only open on Saturdays. It depends on the season. I do change my hours. Until Labor Day, it will be 8 to 12. I find that a lot of people like to come early before it gets too hot and they're, doing their activities for the day. But in the fall, I usually kind of push them a little bit later because, again, who wants to wake up in the dark and the cold to come onto a porch and get baked good? So I kind of push them, to kind of mesh with the seasons.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today, Susan. I appreciate it. And I hope that our listeners, my listeners have been inspired by you. I know I am. I honestly am inspired. I love promoting women who do amazing things just because I think it's great to have role models for the future women that will grow up and just kick butt. So thank you for
Oh,
your
thanks.
time.
It's funny that you should say that because my daughter, she's not allowed to be in here at all, according to my license. So children are not allowed in here while I'm working, which is very difficult for her because she's addicted to sweets. But she's so cute. She'll get Play-Doh and she'll make her own cupcakes and cookies, and she'll make macarons, and she'll make chocolate truffles out of her Play-Doh. And the other day she said, "Mommy, I need a piece of paper and a pen." And I said, "Okay, what are you going to do?" "Oh, I need to make a sign." I said, "Okay, what do you need?" She's like, "You need to help me." And I said, "Well, what do you want to write?" She said, "Katie's Bake Shop now open." So she has this little sign in her play kitchen that her bake shop is open. So I'm really glad that she's kind of inspired by me working really hard. My husband would say that I work too hard. I'm sure he would definitely say that, but that's just who I am. So I can't just, if I had a day off and I didn't have to do anything, I'd be like, but I don't know what to do with myself. Like I can't just sit down. Can't do that, Hopefully one day I can do that, but yeah, he'll say I work too hard, but I hope to instill that hard work ethic in her. So
Yeah. And I think it is important because little ones do see. They're pretty perceptive, right? And observant. So
mhm.
they see. So that's great that obviously she sees how hard you work. And, she could be a little entrepreneur herself.
um, at least she could be another employee when she gets older. So
Yeah.
that'd be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. And you've been listening to Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. So I hope you have a great evening and uncork and pour out some laughter and share it with others because the world certainly needs it. Thank you.